Okay, third graders, you have been working on the rainfall investigation, and I hope that you took 15 to 20 minutes to just work on it yourself. Just get as far as you can, learn as much as you can about what they're asking you and what kind of information they've given you. And that will help get you ready for when we discuss it. You wouldn't want to watch this video before you've taken time, or it won't be as helpful to you. So if you haven't done it, turn this off, go back and do your investigation. But if you have, you already know that it was about rainfall that had fallen, and they recorded it in inches of rain. So that was 1/4 inch of rain, and they tell you what day it fell on. So on Sunday, there was 1/4 of an inch of rain that fell that day. On Tuesday, there was 1/8 of an inch of rain that fell that day. And they're wanting us to answer some questions about this information. And the first question was, which day did it rain more, Sunday or Tuesday? So they're essentially asking us, what's more, 1/4 of inch of rain or 1/8 of an inch of rain? And we could draw a model. That's sort of lots of times that's our first instinct, is to draw a model. And that's not a bad thing to do, but it's not going to give us our final answer. And we'll see why. But it will give us something. When I draw fourths, I make sure there's 4 parts, and that would be one of them. When I'm drawing eighths, I start off making fourths because I'm trying to make them as exactly the same comparison in size as I can. And I want to try to make as perfect eighths as I can. So there's my eighths, and 1/8 is there. Now, in this case, the amounts are pretty different. I can almost just see with my eyes which one is a larger amount, but I can't always do that. So when I draw a model, I want to get in the habit of looking at the model to get some information that I can think about. I just am looking for more data. I'm not looking for the final answer. So what do you notice? And that's a good thing to ask yourself. Always ask, what do I notice about this model? So when I do this with students, lots of times students say, well, I noticed that there's only 4 in this model and 8 in this model. So I'm noticing that 1/4 is more than an 1/8 if we just took 1/4 and 1/8. And you might have already known that, but that's how we would figure that out. Okay, so that general information, 1/4 is bigger than an 1/8, that's what's going to give me my answer. Because if I know, if I have to share, say this is something yummy, and you have to share it with 8 people, you're going to get a smaller bit than if you had to share the same thing with 4 people, you would get more. So 1/4, even though it's a smaller number, it's because you had to share it with fewer people. So you got a larger part. 4ths are larger than 8ths. So if I know that, I begin to get used to understanding denominators and what they're talking about. I will be able to just look at this and go, oh, 4ths are bigger than 8ths. And they'll just have 1 of each. So it's going to have rained more on Sunday. And we record that with a comparison statement. And we call it a greater than, less than sign, but this is really a comparison statement. You're comparing 2 different fractional amounts. All right, so the next comparison they asked you about was, which day did it rain less? Did you notice that they asked less this time? Got to keep your eye out for that. Which one was less? The 2/6 that it rained on Monday, or the 4/6 that it rained on Wednesday? Now I could draw a model, but if I can remember what I learned about the denominator in the last problem and in a lot of the practice that we've been doing, I would know that 6ths are the exact same size piece. So what would be less, having 2 of something or having 4 of the same exact size thing? Well, 2 would be less. So I could say that 2/6 is less than 4/6 of an inch. And there's my inequality statement too. We can call it a comparison statement, but in this case, it's an inequality statement because they're not equal. One is smaller than the other. Let's do the next one. All right, the next question. They said somebody erased part of the data for Friday, but we know that they both had the same amount of rainfall. 4/8 is the same amount as this amount. So in this case, I might draw a model just to be able to get something to think about. So I'll go down here and draw 4/8. I draw my fourths, and then I want each of these fourths to have 2 times as many parts, and I'll end up with eighths. So then let's just go ahead and look at just analyze 4 eighths. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So once I draw my model, I sit back and I think, well, what do I notice? What do you notice? Not what the answer is, just what do you notice? We're analyzing. And sometimes kids say they notice that there's lots of little parts in this model. They might notice that obviously there's 8 parts. They notice that 4 of them are colored in. And then they might also notice that 4 is like half of 8. So thinking, oh, okay, half of the parts are colored in. And that would be some good data to think about. Now that I've noticed some things about this model, which represents the 4 eighths, what model could have just 2 parts and mean the same amount? And again, my models are not exact. They're not for proving it. They're just for thinking about it. And when I think of my 2 parts right here, represented here, I can see that one of them, 1/2, is the same as 4 eighths. And that makes sense in my model, but it also makes sense because if there's 8 parts and you have 4 of them, you've got half of the parts. If there's 2 parts and you have 1 of them, you've got half of the parts. And so without even a model, I can reason. When you think about data and apply it to a problem, you're reasoning through a problem and thinking about it. And that's the way you want to handle fractions. So let's do the last one. In this last problem, they show us that 4/4 of an inch of rain fell on Saturday. And they're asking, what's another way or an equivalent fraction or an equivalent amount to this amount? Equivalent just means equal. What's another way we could write this amount? And so you might already know what 4/4 represents, but if you don't, take a second and sketch your model. Again, models just to kind of get your brain thinking and get yourself into the problem. 4/4 I see would be that. And then I reason about it. I'm thinking, well, I see that there's 4 parts in the whole and we have all 4. So it's the whole thing. Then I can think, well, what are some other ways to say the whole thing? I guess we could say, well, 4/4 is the same as 1 inch, 1 whole inch. But I might get creative and say it's the same as 2/2. And when I get rolling on it, I might realize there's a lot of ways to represent a whole. 3/3, 5/5, 8/8. We could go on all day long. So check over your answers. And again, investigations are not about getting the right answer right away. Investigations are about teaching us how to think and reason through challenging problems. It should be a little bit challenging. You should be able to stretch yourself a little bit as you're thinking through, but you're learning how to reason through math problems. Good for you.